I'm going to talk to you about power in this 21st century. And basically, what I'd like to tell you is that power is changing. And there are two types of changes I want to discuss. One is power transition, which is change of power among states. And there, the simple version of the message is it's moving from west to east. The other is power diffusion, the way power is moving from all states, west or east, to non-state actors.
To all of the people who are sitting in front of their computers right now at home, sipping their coffee, should they be worried, and how much does this affect them?
It looked at first like an attack just on hospitals in the UK, but it's now becoming clear that this malicious software has run riot around the world. Russia, the United States, and many points in between have been hit by what's now a common form of cybercrime.
Russian hacking to influence the American election has dominated the news, but we've also noticed a hacking attack that could be a future menace to America. Last weekend, parts of the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, went dark. Holly Williams reports that Russia appears to have figured out how to crash a power grid with a click.
Well, the problem is the chances of getting hit or getting identified as a hacker is substantially low right now. Something as high as this one, with as much damage as it has done, there will probably be a substantial investigation going on to try to find these hackers. And they have before in the past gone and found these. What I would say though is that the way that this was delivered, and all the code is now out there on how to replicate the same thing. There's going to be a lot of copycats and a lot of folks in the hacking community, in the black hat community, trying to replicate this and get it out there very quickly to make money. So it's not the last that we're going to see out of it. Maybe the original author of this may get discovered, but it's going to take a substantial amount of effort and time and a lot of collaboration between different countries to find out where they're located at, work with extradition laws, go after them, improve damages. So it'll be a very long process in the event that they're even able to find them.
Power is simply the ability to affect others to get the outcomes you want. And you can do it in three ways. You can do it with threats of coercion, sticks. You can do it with payments, carrots. Or you can do it by getting others to want what you want. And that ability to get others to want what you want, to get the outcomes you want without coercion or payment, is what I call soft power. To understand power diffusion, put this in your mind. Capabilities that were once restricted are now available to everyone. And what that means is not that the age of the state is over. The state still matters, but the stage is crowded. The state's not alone. There are many, many actors. Some of that's good. Oxfam, a great non-governmental actor. Some of it's bad. Al-Qaeda, another non-governmental actor.
Someone has broken into the National Bank, the Federal Reserve, a 21st century thief breaking into files, not into metal safes. The mysterious group, Anonymous, has struck again with a warning. This is just the beginning. ABC's senior justice correspondent Pierre Thomas tells us who these people are.
Dear Fox News, it has come to our unfortunate attention that both the name and nature of Anonymous has been ravaged. We are everyone and we are no one. We are anonymous, we are legion. We do not forgive, we do not forget. We are the face of chaos.
Anonymous, ladies and gentlemen, a sophisticated group of politically motivated hackers who have emerged in 2011, and they're pretty scary.
Well, I think this generation has a sense that information wants to be free and information about themselves wants to be free. And in a way, there's a kind of self-surveillance that I think that young people don't think about in political terms. But it is a political issue. People put their lives on the screen. They put really intimate details of their lives out there. And with very little thought, that there might be people using that information in ways that are not benign.
Quite unaware, every single day that we do something digital, we are potentially leaving a trace out there, and that if somebody wanted to find out where we were shopping, what we were doing, who we were communicating with, why we were doing it, what websites we were logging onto, they could do it. But this information is stored digitally in one or another location out there in a way that we may not have access to ourselves. And it's very, very easily manipulated. It's very easily changed by somebody who is either lazy, incompetent, or malevolent in some way. It's very easy for that information to be shared and for patterns of information to seem to appear to certain agencies that could put one under suspicion even if one weren't a suspicious individual.
It's hard to teach the relationship between privacy and democracy, and it's also hard to teach the relationship between intimacy and privacy. You know, what is intimacy without privacy? I think this is really a question for this generation.
This mysterious group, Anonymous, and they would say this themselves, they are providing a service by demonstrating how useless companies are at protecting our data. There is also a very serious aspect to Anonymous. They are ideologically driven. They claim that they are battling a dastardly conspiracy. They say that governments are trying to take over the internet and control it, and that they, Anonymous, are the authentic voice of resistance.
Inefficiency and patchiness of information is a great protection of personal privacy. And the more efficient the systems are that collect and collate data about us, the more the potential is for mistaken misuse.
The critical thing about the internet that makes it censorship resistant is the end-to-end principle. This is the idea that the network at its core is a dumb network. It just forwards packets from one address to another. The intelligence, right, the programs that act on this information are at the endpoints. The endpoints might be web servers, they might be individuals, people's PCs who are talking to each other. And therefore, it's difficult to create a point in the center where you can do the censorship.
Traditionally, the way people thought about power was primarily in terms of military power. For example, the great Oxford historian who taught here at this university, A.J.P. Taylor, defined a great power as a country able to prevail in war. But we need a new narrative if we're to understand power in the 21st century. It's not just prevailing in war, though war still persists. It's not whose army wins. It's also whose story wins. And we have to think much more in terms of narratives and whose narrative is going to be effective.
It's quite clear that you can do basically all of the bad things that a war does without using dynamite, TNT, missiles, to coordinate, sort of using people around the world to coordinate physical military attacks with cyber attacks. So now this moves on to sort of some very serious issues regarding things such as NATO. If you shoot a missile at a NATO country's electrical plant, that is an act of war. Article 5 says, okay, we've been attacked. We all now go and attack the country or whoever attacked the electrical system. But if you take out the same electrical system with a cyber attack, you don't know who did it. And secondly, what is the response? Because in the case of, say, a missile attack, well, basically the idea is a proportional response. You don't start a nuclear war because someone's blown up your electrical plant in one small place. But what is the appropriate response? I haven't been able to ascertain responsibility, and what do you do back?
The technology behind internet censorship is becoming cheaper and cheaper. So it's very affordable for governments, states, you name it, to just buy this and deploy it. Trying to have a control on what people or citizens of one country can see is a mission of all the governments. It's just what they care about and what they might want to block. What I think is important is having a transparency on the process. Who is deciding to block what, and do we have a trust on those people for those decisions they're making?
If you ask how is power distributed in the world today, it's distributed much like a three-dimensional chess game. Top board, military power among states. The United States is the only superpower, and it's likely to remain that way for 2 or 3 decades. Middle board of this three-dimensional chess game, economic power among states, power is multipolar. There are balancers, the US, Europe, China, Japan, can balance each other. The bottom board of this three-dimensional chess game, the board of transnational relations, things that cross borders outside the control of governments, things like climate change, drug trade, financial flows, pandemics, all these things that cross borders outside the control of governments. There, nobody's in charge. It makes no sense to call this unipolar or multipolar. Power is chaotically distributed. And the only way you can solve these problems, and this is where many of our greatest challenges are coming in this century, is through cooperation, through working together, which means that soft power becomes more important, that ability to organize networks to deal with these kinds of problems and to be able to get cooperation.
The world is just becoming so connected that in Western countries, there's nowhere you can put the censorship anymore. That networks are too dense, flows of information are too great, that censorship is basically a lost battle.
Wars persist, power persists, military power is important, keeping balances is important. All this still persists. Hard power is there, and it will remain. But unless you learn how to mix hard power with soft power into strategies that I call smart power, you're not going to deal with the new kinds of problems that we're facing. So the key question that we need to think about as we look at this is how do we work together to produce global public goods, things from which all of us can benefit? How do we define our national interests so that it's not just zero-sum, but positive-sum?